I'm Jeremy, and today I'm going to show you the 7th game in my overview of all the German Game of the Year, Spiel des Jahres winners. And this is a 2000 winner, Torres, by Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling. This is a game for 2 to 4 players that plays in about 60 minutes or so. The box says it's for ages 12 and up. I suspect slightly younger players would be able to play it. And it is essentially a rather abstract game, strategy game where players are going to be placing these little plastic castle pieces onto a board and then trying to maneuver their little wooden knight pieces onto those castles. So players are going to be able to be building these pieces within 3 dimensions on top of one another, and scoring is going to be determined not just by the size of the castle but also the height of the castle and how high you're able to place your knights. I'm going to take a minute to show you how the game plays, and then I'll come back here and let you know what I think about it. Okay, so here is what a 2-player game in progress of Torres might look like, and essentially this might be the situation at the end of, say the second round or so. I'm not sure exactly where the scores would be, but essentially you can see here the board is made up by an 8x8 grid, and it'll have a number of these castle pieces placed onto it at the start. There could be a variable or a set setup depending on if you're playing the basic game or the advanced game, and then players will begin with one of these pawns, which is a knight of their color, placed onto the board, as well as this king figure, which is over here. And the player who chooses their starting position last will get to place that king, and then they will also go last in turn order. So the way that the game is going to work is that players are going to be trying to get control of these castles by placing their knights not only within the largest castles, but also highest up within castles. So you can see that these pieces stack on each other. So here we have a level 2 castle here. So the way that the players are going to do that is that they're going to be given at the start of the game, actually, depending upon the number of players, a different number of these stacks of cubes, which I have right here. So in a 2-player game, there's going to be essentially 3 main rounds of the game, and each round of the game is going to be made up of a number of phases, where each phase a player is going to be able to use a stack of these 3 pieces. But the number of phases and the number of pieces that you get during each phase is going to change based on the number of players. So you can see with a 4-player game, you would get fewer pieces and have fewer phases. After each of these phases, there's always going to be a scoring, so there's going to be 3 scorings during the game. So the way that you're going to be able to use these stacks is essentially, on your turn, you're going to get 6 action points, and the way that you could spend those action points is laid out on this card. Essentially, what you could do is you could use 2 action points to add a knight to the board, and those knights are going to be, you're going to have 6 of those in your color, and you could add them to a space adjacent to where you already are. So this player for 2 action points will be able to place their piece here. And you'll spend all 6 of your action points, and then it will be the next player's turn, and again, that would constitute a phase. The next thing that you could do is you could move a knight for 1 action point. So, for example, if this player wanted to move this knight that they just placed here, they would be able to do that, and it could move on the same level, or jump up 1 level, or jump down levels. So that would be 1 action point just to move from here to here to be now in this castle. The other thing with movement is that knights can move through castles. So let's say I had a knight here. For 1 movement point, they can move through that castle over to here, just because they would basically enter in 1 door and come out another door on the same level or lower. That would make it easier to get over here as opposed to spending action points going all the way around. Pieces are not able to move through opponent's pieces or other pieces already on the board. Third thing that you could do is add a tower from your stack for 1 action point. So this orange player here might spend 2 action points to add 2 towers here. Again, you're going to be limited by the number in your supply. And then they might spend another action point to move their player up to here. So now they'll be on the 3rd level of this level 3 castle. When you're adding stacks, you can never add it so that 2 castles are merged, so that would be an illegal move. You can never add a level to a stack that makes it higher than its area in spaces. So, for example, this here is 1, 2, 3 spaces high. So although you could add this one here, you would not be able to add a 4th level to this tower until you added a 4th space within the area of that tower. Then the other actions. First of all, this action here, you could spend an action point to draw a card. That's only in the basic game. I tend not to play with that set of rules. Instead, I play the advanced game, where each player is going to get one of each of the action cards in their color, and they'll be able to play one action card per round. And playing an action card gives you cost no points. Those action cards have various abilities. I'll go over those in a second, but you could only play one per round, and once they're used, they are out of the game. The final thing that you could do on your turn is to just take a point for one action point, and you would just slide up on the scoring track like that. If another player is in front of you, let's say this was the situation, no two pieces could be on the same space of the scoring track. So if orange took a point here, they would actually go forward 2 points because they would not be able to occupy the same space as the green. So just picking those essential actions is going to be how you're going to play out the round. At the end of every third round, there's going to be a scoring. I'll just for a moment show you how the scoring works. So essentially what happens is that each piece for each player will score. Although if a person has more than one piece in a castle, so let's say this, only your best knight within that castle is going to score. So you can't score the same castle twice. But the way that they're going to score is they're going to get 1 point per space in the castle times 1 point per height that their knight is on. So for example, here it's just a 1-by-1 castle and the knight is on level 1, they would just get 1 point for that. Here it's it's a area 2 castle and the knight's on level 1, so that'd just be 2 points. Over here, this is a 1, 2, 3 area castle, and they're on level 3, so that'd be 3 times 3, or 9 points. And then here, this is a 3-by-1 castle, so they would get 1, 2, 3 points. And because this has the king in it, the way the king scores is it changes from round to round. At the end of phase 1, if you are on level 1 and the king is in the king's castle rather, you'll score 5 points. In phase 2, if you're on level 2 within the king's castle, you'll score 10 points. And at the end of phase 3, if you're on level 3 within the king's castle, at the end of phase 3, you'll score 15 points. So those are just bonus points. So let's just say this is the end of phase 1. This player would score 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. So that's essentially how scoring is going to work. And then the player who's last in turn order, or last in scoring, will be the first in turn order in the next phase. And the play will just continue like that for the 3 phases with a final scoring at the end. One other benefit that the player with the lowest score has is that they have the option if they want to move the king to another castle. So if green was the lowest scorer here, they might move it to this castle or this castle, where they would be well positioned to score at the start of the next round. So that's just one other benefit for being in last place. So now we'll just go over the special cards, which again, you could either draw randomly from a shared deck or start with all of them in your hand at the start of the game. So this one allows you to remove one piece and add it to another space on the board. So for example, I could take you would not be able to do that if it invalidated a castle's building, so I could not remove this single space over here because this tower is already 3 high. But I could take this one here and maybe add it here. There's a card like this and a card like this. This just gives you an extra action point or 2 for that round or that phase. This one here, it allows you to move one of your existing knights on the board to another space as if it were just being placed. So for example, I could move this one here over here, just as if I had just placed that knight. This one here, it allows you to hop over a piece that's on the board. Normally you can't pass through opponents, and if you want to, you could hop up 1 level. So for example, if I had this orange piece here and green had a piece there, I would be able to hop up into that castle. This is an extremely powerful card, as it allows players to ignore the rule that you can only move up 1 level during a turn or a movement. So for example, if green was here, they would be able to enter that castle and come out on any level as long as they're next to a door. So for example, they would be immediately able to go up to level 2 if they'd played that card. This one allows you to hop up 2 levels as opposed to just 1. So let's just say we had something like this here, which would not be possible, but Oh yeah, it would be. This player would be able to just hop right up onto that as opposed to just hopping back and forth as you normally have to do as you build up. So that's just a better hopping. This is a diagonal movement, so this green player, for example, would be able to move from here to here. And you could also hop when you do that. And this one is also pretty powerful. It allows you to, let's just say this castle had been extended. It allows you to just take a piece and then place it underneath your piece like that. So you don't even have to move off the space, just another piece is inserted underneath your character. And then finally, this allows you to take a piece from the general supply as opposed to your personal supply and just place it using normal placement rules. So those are the special cards. You'll be using those over the course of the game. Again, you can only play one per round. And essentially that's it. At the end of the 3 rounds, whichever player has manipulated those rules to score the most points will be the winner. One thing that I forgot to mention in the advanced game is that at the start of the game, you're going to pick one of these advanced scoring cards, which will score you points based on if you meet this certain requirement during the end game. So for example, if you have all your pieces adjacent to each other, you would get 40 points on this one. Here you get points for pieces that are among these diagonal vertices of the board, and if you have up to 3 of those along those lines, you get points, and so on. Here you want them along the board edges. Just one more thing to think about when playing the advanced game. Alright, so that is Torres, and this I think is a very worthy winner of the Spiel des Jahres. When it first won, it was somewhat derided a little bit for 2 reasons. First of all, because it was the second consecutive Kramer and Kiesling game to win, and both games that won used this action allowance system, or an action point allowance system. Tikal, I think, used it somewhat less successfully, even though it innovated in it. In that game, players got 10 action points per turn, and they were able to spend them all, which sometimes meant turns lasted a long time. Here you're reduced to 6 points, so you have to spend them more carefully, yet at the same time I think that this game does allow for more strategic and creative playing. Not just because of the movement rules, which let you do things such as move through castles to save on action points, but also because of those cards, which let you really manipulate those actions. The fact that you can only play one of those per turn really requires you to plan your moves ahead, and I think that that's basically creates an interesting puzzle every turn that you're going to be playing, how to best exploit the action point system. The second reason I think it was somewhat derided upon the initial winning of the award was because it is relatively complicated as far as Spiel des Jahres winners go. I think that some German families felt that the game was too complex. And I think that as a result, some of the subsequent winners of the game have been less complex than this was. Yet I would not call this an especially complex game. I think that the rules are really intelligently laid out. You get player aids that show you all of your options, so it's less a question of rules complexity than strategic complexity, how to best manipulate those rules to score well. So I think that the game has held up very well over the years. It's something that I've played, I believe, maybe 3 or 4 times in the last month, several times with brand new players, and they still, everybody seems to really be receptive to the game, so that's, I think, a indicator that it has stood the test of time. Unfortunately, I believe it is currently out of print both in the US and in Germany, but there are used copies on the market, and I think it's absolutely worth tracking one down, if not necessarily to own, at least to try this game at least once. The game, like I said during the overview, does have a basic setup and an advanced setup. Just generally speaking, I would suggest using the advanced rules, where every player is going to get their own set of cards, just because it gives you more strategic options and because it feels more fair, frankly, because you're not just randomly drawing cards on your turn. You're basically going to be able to choose from an array of cards. So overall, this is a game that's really interesting. I think that it has a really great ramp up, which is always important in a game. In the first phase of the game, you're lucky to score 20 points or so. Maybe you'll be luckier than me. But by the end of the game, players will have like close to 300 points. That's not uncommon at all. And just each round compounding and multiplying the number of points that you're going to get is one of the ways that the game almost feels like it's teaching you how to play better as it goes. And that's just, a side effect of the scoring rules, but also the side effect of the strategies of the game becoming more apparent as you go. So this is a very well-designed game, one that I would absolutely recommend that everybody try out. Don't be afraid of its abstract nature. It's actually a lot more interesting and a lot more interactive than a lot of abstracts that you might have tried in the past. So those are my thoughts on Torres, and thanks for watching.